Good morning, it's Friday the 10th of January. You're tuned in to our 10 a.m. newscast coming to you from ARIRANG's news centre in Seoul. Let's take a look at what's making the headlines. Seoul says it will not link the reunion of Korean families separated since the Korean War to other Korean issues, after Pyongyang rejects an offer to discuss arranging family gatherings in time for the Lunar New Year holiday. While Tokyo exerts diplomatic efforts to rationalize its Prime Minister's visit to a war shrine honoring convicted war criminals, China, a victim of Japan's imperialistic past, criticizes the visit on the international stage. Plus, aiming to shed its image as a poor host for foreign investors, Korea unveils a string of measures to make the country one of the world's 10 largest destinations for foreign direct investment. And we begin with the disappointing news out of North Korea. Pyongyang has turned down Seoul's offer for talks to resume reunions for families separated since the Korean War. Pyongyang did, however, leave the door open for future dialogue under certain preconditions. Our Hwang Sang-hee reports.
North Korea has rejected South Korea's proposal to discuss a resumption of family reunions for those separated during the Korean War. Thursday's response came 3 days after South Korean President Park Geun-hye expressed hopes of holding the humanitarian event sometime during the Lunar New Year holiday, which falls in the last week of January. In a statement on Thursday, the North said there had been no change in Seoul's warlike posture and said for a successful round of humanitarian exchanges to take place, the right atmosphere must be created. Although not named directly, Pyongyang seems to be referring to the upcoming joint military exercise between Seoul and Washington that takes place annually between February and March. It also said that in order for the two Koreas to discuss the matter of family reunions, they must also address issues raised by the North, most likely the resumption of South Korean tours to the Mount Kumgang resort. The North, however, did not slam the door shut on family reunions altogether. The statement said the two sides could meet for talks when the South is willing to discuss the issues proposed by the North. South Korea's Ministry of Unification expressed regret over North Korea's rejection, saying humanitarian issues should be dealt with separately.
It is regrettable that North Korea is linking annual military drills with humanitarian issues. South Korea maintains its stance that the issue of family reunions will be dealt with separately from the issues raised by the North.
The Unification Ministry called on North Korea to accept Seoul's proposal for talks on resuming family reunions and added that the North should show its sincerity in mending ties with the South through action and not just through words. Hwang Sang-hee, ARIRANG News.
South Korea and the United States continued talks Thursday on how much each side should contribute towards stationing of US troops in Korea, but fell short of reaching a deal. Sources say the biggest sticking point at the 10th round of talks in Seoul remained the total amount of Korea's contribution. Seoul wants its payment starting this year to be around $850 million US, but Washington is asking for more. The talks will resume on this Friday, with the two sides hoping to finalize the special measures agreement, of which the previously agreed terms expired last week. North Korea has been found to have the worst nuclear security conditions in the world. A report by a US-based think tank shows the regime ranks rock bottom in terms of safeguarding its nuclear materials and adhering to international standards. Connie Kim has the details.
While the international community rightly focuses on the problems facing the region and the wider world after the Fukushima nuclear disaster, something equally as bad could happen at any time just north of the border, as a new report shows North Korea has the worst nuclear security conditions in the world. Nuclear Threat Initiative, a US-based think tank, ranked North Korea's nuclear materials security index at 30 points out of 100, the lowest among 25 countries that hold weapons-usable nuclear materials. The index measures the quantity and sites of nuclear materials, global norms and domestic commitments of countries with more than 1 kilogram of highly enriched uranium and plutonium. Among the factors evaluated, North Korea ranked the lowest in the categories of voluntary commitments, safeguards adherence, and compliance. The NTI said that the North's lack of information regarding nuclear activity was the main reason behind the country's low scores. The organization also added it could improve its scores if the country signs and ratifies international agreements and shows initiative in international nuclear security. Overall, nuclear material security improved worldwide. 7 states, including Hungary, Mexico, and Ukraine, began completely removing most or all of its weapons-usable nuclear materials in 2012. The report comes ahead of the Nuclear Security Summit to be held in March in The Hague. Australia topped the list, followed by Canada and Switzerland, while India and Iran ranked 23rd and 24th, respectively. Connie Kim, ARIRANG News.
China has accused Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe of siding with convicted war criminals over the United Nations following his recent visit to the Yasukuni Shrine, as the Japanese war dead honoured there include more than a dozen Class A war criminals. Kim Hyun-bin reports.
China has taken its diplomatic role with Japan to the United Nations, questioning Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's distorted view on history after he visited a shrine commemorating several notorious war criminals. China's UN envoy Lui Ji-yi says Abe was siding with convicted war criminals over the UN by visiting the Yasukuni Shrine, which he said whitewashes and glorifies Japan's wartime aggression.
It is a dangerous distortion of the right and wrong. It is also a stand on the wrong side of history.
In response, Japan's UN ambassador Motohide Yoshikawa said Abe's visit did not praise war criminals or militarism, but was a tribute to the Japanese war dead. Following talks with visiting Japanese foreign and defense ministers in Paris Thursday, French Foreign Minister Laurent Fabius said Abe's visit, although a delicate issue, was to respect the Japanese that died during the war. Abe's younger brother and senior vice foreign minister Nobuo Kishi will head to the U.S. next Monday to ask Washington to understand why Abe visited the shrine. During his 5-day trip, Kishi is expected to meet with U.S. government officials and experts, among others. 14 Class A war criminals and 100 more convicted of lesser crimes are enshrined in Yasukuni, among Japan's 2.5 million war dead. Kim Hyun-bin, ARIRANG News.
President Park Geun-hye's first overseas trip of the new year will take her to India and Switzerland. She will embark on a 9-day tour of the two nations next Wednesday. Our presidential office correspondent Oh Jin-ju has the details.
The creative economy will be the key theme of President Park's trip to India and Switzerland. The concept encourages collaboration between creative ideas and the science and technology sector to produce new growth engines for the economy. In India, President Park is scheduled to hold bilateral talks with Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, and the two are expected to discuss cooperation in the sectors of security, trade and investment, and most importantly, science and information communications technology, the key parts of a creative economy. Further cooperation in this field with India, a huge market with a population of 1.2 billion, is expected to give a boost to President Park's vision for a creative economy, which is one of the major goals of her 3-year economic reform plan unveiled earlier this week. In the Swiss capital of Bern, President Park will hold a bilateral summit with President of the Swiss Confederation, Didier Burkhalter, and the two are expected to seek ways to expand cooperation in various fields, especially science and technology and vocational training, sectors that are strengths for the European country. President Park's trip marks the first state visit by a Korean president to Switzerland. During her stay in that country, she will also attend the World Economic Forum in Davos and give a keynote speech on the creative economy and entrepreneurship. The presidential office of Chung Won-tae says President Park plans to introduce her economic reform plan, which centers around the creative economy, and promote Korea's economic and investment environment to bring more foreign businesses to the country. Oh Jin-ju, ARIRANG News.
The leaders of the ruling and main opposition parties here in South Korea are set to hold separate press conferences early next week, where they'll announce their policy goals for 2014. Our political correspondent Kim Hyun-ji reports on what we can expect.
The ruling Saenuri Party will hold its New Year's news conference at its headquarters in Yeouido next Tuesday, about 1 week after President Park Geun-hye held her own. Saenuri Party chief Hwang Woo-yeol is expected to outline how his party intends to help President Park realize her 3-year economic innovation plan. The president wants to put the country on the path to a per capita income of $40,000 and a 70% employment rate before her term ends. With that in mind, the ruling party chief is likely to talk about how the National Assembly should support the slowly recovering economy and boost domestic demand. As the legislation of such bills requires bipartisan efforts, Hwang is likely to seek help from the main opposition party. Another issue that may come up during the press conference is reunification with North Korea, which President Park described as being a jackpot in her New Year's address. On the other side of the political aisle lies the main opposition Democratic Party, whose chairman Kim Han-gil will hold his New Year's press conference on Monday. Political watchers expect Kim to urge President Park and the government to communicate more effectively in 2014, both with the general public and the opposition. He's also expected to once again call on the president to launch an independent investigation into allegations that a number of state institutions, including the spy agency and the military, try to influence the outcome of the 2012 presidential election in favor of now President Park Geun-hye. Reviving the economy is also a goal of the Democratic Party, but the party wants to do it by promoting fair business practices. The policy divide between the rival parties and the illegal electioneering scandal in the run-up to the 2012 presidential election kept the National Assembly in a deadlock for much of last year. Kim Hyun-ji, ARIRANG News.
The Korean government is aiming to lure more foreign direct investment to boost the local economy. From tax breaks to visa extensions, our Kim Min-ji outlines how the government is sweetening the deal.
The Korean government on Thursday unveiled a set of measures to draw more foreign direct investment to the nation in a bid to spur economic growth by boosting production and creating jobs. The Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy's blueprint includes a relaxation of regulations on foreign investment and incentives to encourage global companies to set up their headquarters in Korea. First, the government plans to ease and clarify foreign investment regulations. Many economists have pointed out that one of the biggest obstacles to foreign investment in Korea is the maze of confusing regulations on overseas investors. The government also plans to encourage global enterprises to establish regional headquarters and research and development centers in Korea. For all foreign employees at the headquarters, the government will fix the income tax rate at 17% and extend their visa status to a maximum of 5 years. The blueprint also includes a series of incentives for foreign investors, including quality of life improvements. Finally, the government also plans to map out strategies to attract more foreign investment in the future. Although Korea has seen the amount of foreign direct investment jump in recent years, the country is still far behind other global players. In 2012, foreign direct investment in Korea came to $147 billion, far below the US, which had $3.9 trillion, and Britain at $1.3 trillion. In addition, Korea's foreign direct investment in terms of GDP is the lowest in the OECD. FDI accounted for just 12.7% of GDP in 2012. That puts Korea second to last among the 34 OECD countries and far below top-ranking countries such as Luxembourg, Ireland, and Britain. But with the newly announced plan, Korea is now aiming to become one of the world's top 10 investment destinations in the coming years. Kim Min-ji, ARIRANG News.
Now, with PC sales on a seemingly terminal decline and the smartphone market saturated, what's a computer chip giant to do? Well, it looks as though wearable tech will be the industry's next target. Yulian shows us the latest innovations.
It's no longer cutting-edge smartphones, but wearable technology that's generating all the buzz at this year's Consumer Electronics Show. Intel, the world's largest chip maker, which has been slow to adapt its processor for smartphones and tablets, took the leap into wearable computing. It unveiled a chip designed for wearables that is called the Edison. The chip is essentially a tiny computer and includes a dual-core CPU, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and even has its own app store. By integrating the chip, clothing and gadget makers will be able to expand their wearable product lines. In addition to the chip, Intel also unveiled its own wearable gadgets. One is a set of smart earbuds that can play music and take the wearer's heartbeat. The other is a onesie that's actually a baby monitor capable of detecting a baby's movement, body temperature, and breathing. Now, another chip giant, Qualcomm, is making a similar move to shift gears away from its forte of creating platforms for smartphones. Its new Qualcomm Internet processor is geared toward the so-called Internet of Things, a network of everyday objects that are connected to the Internet. The platform will essentially be used to share data on home security, energy, and family health from various devices at home. By 2020, the number of internet-connected devices is expected to expand to 26 billion and wearable devices to over 370 million units, according to research from Gartner. So it's no surprise these chip giants are venturing into what are now considered niche markets that appear to have vast potential for future applications. Yurian, ARIRANG News.
Federal Reserve Chairman Bernanke has offered an optimistic view on the U.S. economy's prospects, but warned that tough decisions lay ahead on dealing with long-term budget deficits and spiraling healthcare costs. Meeting with Democratic senators in Washington on Thursday, Bernanke said the reduction in federal budget deficits and the country's improving energy position were contributing to a healthier U.S. economy. However, a senator at the meeting said Bernanke tempered his positive outlook by warning that long-term challenges do remain, particularly in regard to healthcare. Bernanke's term as Fed chairman ends on January 31st. He will be replaced by current Vice Chair Janet Yellen after she was confirmed by the Senate earlier this week. The CEOs of Samsung Electronics and Apple will make another attempt to settle their global patent feud before another federal court trial set for March. According to court papers the two tech giants filed this week, Samsung CEO Kwon Oh-hyun and Apple CEO Tim Cook have agreed to conduct the settlement talks by February 19th. The mediation meeting comes amid unconfirmed reports the two firms are looking to settle some of their patent disputes outside court. Over the past couple of years, Samsung and Apple have been involved in a number of lawsuits linked to smartphone patents, which have resulted in damages totaling roughly $930 million being awarded to Apple. Germany has vowed to give a helping hand in destroying Syria's chemical weapons stockpile. German Foreign Minister Frank-Walter Steinmeier says Berlin has decided to contribute as it has the capacity and technology to undertake the task. Syria is believed to have 1,300 tons of chemical weapons materials, including nerve agents like sarin and VX. The German minister added the removal of the weapons could be a decisive step towards ending the conflict in Syria. Waste from the destroyed weapons will be burnt at a government facility in the town of Münster in northern Germany. Germany has until now refused to accept chemical weapons onto its soil. The country has a strong pacifist and anti-nuclear movement which is opposed to involvement in any foreign missions, especially in the Middle East. Now, with the Winter Olympics, World Cup and Asian Games coming up over the next 12 months, there is a lot to be excited about in 2014. And in the fourth and penultimate of our previews of the upcoming year, we take a closer look at what the sporting year has to offer with our Song Ji-sun.
We are now less than 1 month away from the Winter Olympics in Sochi, a resort city on the Black Sea in southwestern Russia. After finishing 5th in the medal standings in Vancouver 4 years ago, Korea is hoping to finish 7th overall in Sochi with at least 4 gold medals. Those medals are most likely to be raked in on the ice with Korea's speed skating trio, who are back, faster and stronger than before. Lee Sang-hwa has been unstoppable, setting a new world record in November, and Mo Tae-bum is the current world and Olympic champion in the 500-meter. Former short track speed skater Lee Seung-hoon is after golds in both the 5 and 10,000-meter races.
Figure skater Kim Yeon-na will draw the curtain down her skating career, performing to the tango Adios Nonino. Heading into summer, Brazil is vying to clinch its 6th World Cup trophy at home. Take a closer look at Group G, because Korea will face one of these 4 teams in the round of 16 if it advances. Korea was drawn in Group H, where no team stands out from the pack, but they entered the tournament with the lowest FIFA ranking in the group. Setting up a strategic base camp near the world-famous Iguazu Falls, Korean footballers are aiming to reach the quarterfinals, and the first match against Russia will be the key to see if Korea can advance to the second stage. This coming fall, Korea's port city of Incheon will host the 2014 Asian Games. We're expecting the 13,000 participants from 45 countries, and North Korea may be one of those nations. 28 Olympic sports plus 8 others are in the lineup, including baseball, bowling, and squash. Artistic gymnast Yang Hak-sun, who has his own technique named after him in vault, is back to defend his title, and Olympian Park Tae-hwan will be competing in the swimming venue named after him in Incheon. For the Asian Games, Korea is shooting for an all-round second for the 5th straight time after China. 송지선, 아리랑 뉴스.
And TGI Friday, everyone, as we kick things off in the LPGA. Now, things are going to get even more exciting as a new point system in the LPGA will be implemented for the 2014 season. And it also means another title Park In-bi can get her hands on. And in the latest point system, each golfer will be awarded 500 points for a first-place finish, 300 for second, and 190 points for a third-place finish, and so on. But in the case of an LPGA major, golfers will be given 25% more, as the winner will receive 625 points. And at the end of the season, the golfer with the most points will earn $1 million in prize money. And moving on to some winter sports news, the South Korean bobsleigh team continues to surprise everyone as they won not just 1, but 2 medals in the latest America Cup. Now, during the 7th round of the America Cup in Lake Placid, U.S., Won Yun-jong and Seo Young-woo finished first in the 2-man bobsleigh event to win the gold medal. But that's not all. The duo of Kim Dong-hyun and Chung Jung-in finished second as the South Korean bobsleigh team take home a gold and a silver in the latest event. And staying on winter sports, we saw the success of the bobsleigh team, skeleton, and now luge, as Korea earned tickets to all 4 luge events in Sochi. With the Winter Olympics less than a month away, the International Luge Federation notified the Korean Luge Federation that they have earned their ticket to the Sochi Winter Games. Now, this includes the men's and women's single, 2-person luge, and the team relay event, as the sport draws more and more interest from the fans. And now moving on to some Thursday night's KBL action. Jeonju KCC Aegis topped Wonju-dongbu Promi in the final score of 74-64. As we shift over to Seoul SK Knights taking on Incheon Itilan Elephants, with Aaron Haynes returning to the lineup. Of course, going into the game here, first quarter of the game, Incheon off to a great start as they take a 27-17 lead thanks to Ricardo Pau's 11 points in the quarter, before going into halftime with a nice 45-35 lead. Now, second half of the game, SK trying to rally, but with Aaron Haynes limited to just 18 minutes in the game, Incheon holds on to take this game 75-66, your final score. And now finishing things off with some Thursday night's V-League action, as the Korean Expressway pulled off an upset win over the IBK Altos with the final set score of 3-0 in the Women's League. Now, meanwhile, Hyundai Capital Skywalkers took on the LIG Graders over on the men's side, so let's take a look at the highlights. Now, first set, LIG off to a monster start as Hyundai Capital struggles to score, and the first set goes to LIG 25-21. But unfortunately for LIG, no repeat performance from them as the Skywalkers improved their attack in the next 3 sets and sweeping the rest of the match 25-23, 25-15, and 30-28 as Liberman Algamez puts up 33 points with Moon Sung-min adding 14 points. Hyundai Capital rally back to take this match 3-1. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great weekend, everyone, and see you guys again for your sports needs.
And those are the news stories we're following for now. Thanks ever so much for joining us. We'll be back at noon Korea time. But in the meantime, you can always catch up with what's been happening on our website, which can be found at arirang.co.kr/news.